We breathe thousands of times every single day. From the moment we are born until the moment we die, the breath never leaves us. It is with us through joy and sorrow, through failure and triumph, through birth and death. Yet, strangely, most people live their entire lives without truly being aware of a single breath. It is so close, so constant, so familiar that we overlook it. But in that simple, unnoticed rhythm lies something extraordinary, the doorway to awakening. The breath is not mystical. It doesn't speak in words or ideas. It does not argue or promise. It simply is. And yet, for those who pay attention, it becomes the most honest and immediate reflection of life itself. In fact, it is one of the only things we cannot avoid. We can turn away from responsibilities, ignore people, and avoid problems. But we cannot stop breathing, not for long. The breath is life in motion. It is the most direct experience of presence that we have. The Buddha himself taught that the breath could serve as a complete path to liberation. He didn't propose complex theories or metaphysics. He invited people to sit quietly, observe the breath, and begin to understand the mind. In the ancient teachings, this practice was not just for calming down or managing stress. It was a profound tool for seeing reality as it truly is. Through the breath, we can watch the body, feelings, thoughts, and patterns of the mind unfold with startling clarity. The breath is always happening now. It cannot occur in the past. It cannot be brought back from the future. It anchors us firmly in the present, not as a concept, but as direct experience. When we observe the breath, we are not thinking about presence. We are presence. This is what makes the breath such a powerful gateway. It does not require imagination or belief. It brings us into contact with what is already here, already real, already unfolding in this moment. In our modern world, the mind is constantly being pulled in different directions. We are flooded with information, distractions, and pressures. Our thoughts jump from one thing to another, rarely staying still. We live in a state of mental noise, often unaware of how lost we are in it. In such a world, something as simple as sitting still and observing the breath may seem too easy, even boring. But that's only because we have forgotten what it means to truly observe. The breath is not entertainment. It is not a tool for escape. It is a mirror. When we pay close attention to it, we begin to notice how restless the mind is, how impatient we are, how easily we grasp at pleasant things and resist unpleasant ones. The breath does not change to please us. It flows whether we like it or not. And in that quiet persistence, it teaches us the art of surrender. It teaches us to see, to feel, and to be, without judgment, without grasping, without fleeing. Over time, we begin to realize that observing the breath is not just about breathing. It's about learning how to be fully alive. Each breath becomes a doorway through which we step into reality, not the filtered version created by our hopes and fears, but the raw, vivid, and unfiltered truth of this moment. And as we pass through that doorway again and again, something begins to shift. The mind becomes steadier. The heart becomes gentler. The noise softens. And in the quiet, we begin to see more clearly. This is not just a spiritual idea. It is a direct and practical path. Ancient practitioners used the breath not just to find peace, but to penetrate the deepest truths about life. They watched how thoughts arose and passed away, how feelings came and went, how even the sense of self was not as solid as it seemed. And they did this through breath, not through belief or ritual, but through moment-to-moment awareness. The simplicity of the breath is what makes it so powerful. It is always available. It requires no equipment, no ceremony, no teacher. You can practice with the breath whether you are rich or poor, old or young, sitting under a tree or waiting in traffic. No matter where you are in life, the breath is there, always inviting you back to now. This lecture is about that invitation. We are not going to talk about breathing techniques or how to manipulate the breath. We are not going to treat it as just another method of relaxation. We are going to explore the breath as a path to presence, a path to insight, a path to freedom. We will look at how the ancient teachings describe the stages of this practice, how it deepens over time, how it connects with mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. We will also see how the breath has been misunderstood in modern times, and how returning to its original spirit, simple, direct, honest, can open something profound within us. Most importantly, we will reflect on how this practice can be lived, not just studied, because knowing about the breath is not the same as knowing the breath. Talking about presence is not the same as being present. You don't need to become anyone new. You don't need to add anything to yourself. All you need is to pause, breathe, and begin to see. This is the heart of the path. It doesn't demand grand gestures. It simply asks you to come back, again and again, to this breath, this moment, this life. So let us begin. Not with complexity, not with doctrine, but with something so close, so familiar, so alive, the breath that is happening right now. To begin understanding the path of breath awareness, we must first slow down and question what it really means to be mindful of breathing. On the surface, it may seem too simple. After all, we all breathe. But the kind of attention we're speaking of here is not ordinary awareness. It is not just noticing that breathing is happening. It is a careful, steady, and honest observation that transforms how we see ourselves and the world. When we sit down to observe the breath, we are not adding something new to the breath. We are not trying to change it or make it behave. We are simply bringing the light of awareness to something that has always been there, just outside the reach of our usual attention. It is like standing in a room that has always been dark, and for the first time, lighting a candle. The room hasn't changed, but now we can see. The breath is unique among all objects of meditation. It is physical, yet subtle. It is always moving, yet always returning. It is both part of the body and a reflection of the mind. When we are calm, the breath is calm. When we are anxious, the breath is tight. When we are angry, the breath can feel sharp and fast. In this way, it serves as a direct link between our inner world and our outer experience. It is a perfect mirror. Unlike thoughts, the breath is not tangled in language. It does not lie. It does not judge. It does not bring stories from the past or worries about the future. It is honest, unfiltered, and alive. This is why so many great teachers have pointed to it as the foundation of spiritual practice. Because if you can stay with the breath, you can stay with reality. And in staying with reality, you begin to awaken. It is important to understand that this is not about controlling the breath. We are not here to manipulate it or breathe in a special way. That can be useful in other contexts. But in the path of deep mindfulness, the breath must be allowed to unfold naturally. We observe the breath as it is, not as we want it to be. Whether it is short or long, soft or rough, deep or shallow, we watch it with interest and kindness. We let the breath teach us. Many people, when first beginning this practice, expect something to happen. They want to feel peace, to feel good, to quiet the mind quickly. But the true purpose of observing the breath is not to create a particular feeling. It is to see clearly. The breath is a tool, not an escape. When the mind is agitated and we try to use the breath to cover it up, we miss the point. The breath is not a hiding place. It is a way to understand the agitation itself. This kind of seeing requires patience. The breath doesn't shout. It whispers. And at first, the whisper can be drowned out by the noise of our thoughts and distractions. But as we continue, gently and without force, we begin to hear it. The breath has a rhythm, a texture, a mood. And when we listen closely, it starts to reveal more than just air moving in and out of the body. It reveals the state of the heart, the patterns of tension, the habits of mind. Some days, the breath feels open and light, like a soft breeze. Other days, it feels narrow, trapped, or forced. Instead of reacting to these changes, we learn to observe them with curiosity. What does the breath feel like when we are worried? What does it do when we are sad, or excited, or restless? In this way, the breath becomes a friend, one that reflects our inner condition without judgment. And in learning to stay with it, we begin to stay with ourselves. This is where transformation begins. Most of us are strangers to our own experience. We spend so much time in thought, memory, imagination, and expectation that we rarely know what is happening in the body and mind right now. The breath pulls us out of that fog. It doesn't give answers, but it gives clarity. It doesn't solve our problems, but it shows us what's really going on. And often, that is enough. Imagine sitting quietly, feeling the breath touch the nose, flow down into the lungs, rise and fall in the belly. Nothing grand is happening, but in that quiet, something changes. The mind begins to settle. The heart begins to soften. We are no longer chasing the next moment. We are no longer resisting this one. We are simply breathing, fully, consciously, without distraction. And that alone is profound. This awareness can go with us wherever we go. It is not limited to the meditation cushion. When walking, we can feel the breath. When speaking, we can return to it. When facing difficulty, we can find it again. The breath becomes a refuge, not because it protects us from life, but because it anchors us in life. In the chaos of the world, the breath is steady. In the confusion of the mind, the breath is simple. In the noise of emotion, the breath is quiet. It may seem almost too ordinary, but the breath is not ordinary. It is the thread that holds everything together. When we follow it with full awareness, we are following the path back to the heart of life. Not a mystical place, not a distant goal, but the ground beneath our feet, the air in our lungs, the presence of this very moment. To be mindful of breathing is to begin seeing the truth of things, that nothing lasts, that everything changes, and that peace is possible not through holding on, but through letting go. And it all begins with something we already have. This breath, this body, this awareness, right here, right now. When we begin to follow the breath with care and presence, we may notice something surprising. The breath begins to unfold in stages. It is not just a repetitive cycle of in and out. Rather, it becomes a journey, a path with distinct moments of awareness, insight, and deepening stillness. The ancient teachings described this unfolding process in 16 clear steps. These steps are not rules or techniques to be forced. They are natural milestones that emerge when mindfulness becomes steady and sincere. The first few steps begin very simply. We are invited to recognize the breath as it is, breathing in, breathing out. That's all. But even this simple awareness is profound. Most of the time, our attention is scattered. We are thinking, planning, reacting. To simply stay with one full inhalation and one full exhalation, without drifting away, is not easy. But it is possible. And with gentle persistence, we begin to stay longer, to settle deeper. Then we start to notice the breath's length. Sometimes it is short, sometimes long. We are not changing it. We are simply noticing. The mind becomes more refined. It starts to detect subtle shifts in the breath's rhythm and shape. This is not about measuring or counting, but about becoming intimate with the breath, as though meeting an old friend and truly listening. As we continue, we become aware of the whole body breathing. It is no longer just air in the nose. It is a full body experience. The chest expands, the shoulders relax, the belly rises and falls. The breath touches everything. We feel grounded, embodied, alive in this moment. And with that, a natural calming begins. The body starts to let go. Tension softens. The breath flows more freely. Without effort, peace begins to arise. This is the first group of steps, awareness of the body and the breath. And it lays the foundation for everything that follows. We are not escaping the body. We are entering it with kindness and clarity. We are no longer strangers to our own physical presence. We are home. As the body settles, a new dimension begins to open, feeling. Not just physical sensation, but the emotional flavor of experience. We begin to notice how the breath carries with it a certain tone. Sometimes it feels light and joyful, sometimes warm and pleasant. These are not created. They arise naturally when the mind becomes still. Joy may bloom unexpectedly, like sunlight breaking through clouds. A quiet contentment may fill the body like warm water. We don't cling to these feelings. We observe them, appreciate them, and let them pass. We also begin to see the deeper movements of the heart, the habits, moods, and reactions that color our experience. This is not always pleasant. Sometimes we meet restlessness, boredom, irritation, or fear. But instead of reacting, we begin to watch. We allow these mental patterns to come and go, just like the breath. And slowly, with compassion, we begin to calm them too. This is the heart of the practice, not controlling what we feel, but learning to stay with it, to witness the waves of the mind without being swept away. The breath supports us. It becomes an anchor in the middle of emotional storms. And as the storms pass, the sky of the mind begins to clear. Then something beautiful happens. The mind itself becomes an object of awareness. We start to observe the mind not as me, but as a process, changing, flowing, opening. We see when the mind is concentrated and when it is scattered. We see its brightness and dullness, its joy and heaviness. We are no longer inside every thought. We are watching them from a little distance. We are not lost in them. We are free to see clearly. This is a turning point. When we observe the mind without clinging, we can begin to shape it gently. We learn how to gladden the mind when it is heavy. We learn how to steady the mind when it is restless. We learn how to soften the mind when it is hard. And most importantly, we begin to taste a mind that is free, not caught in craving, not driven by fear, not owned by the past or future. It is here that the breath becomes more than a support. It becomes a vehicle for awakening. As the mind quiets, we begin to notice deeper truths. We see that everything we observe, the body, feelings, thoughts, is changing moment by moment. Nothing stays. Nothing is fixed. Nothing belongs to us. This is not a theory. It is a direct seeing. A breath comes in. A breath goes out. It never repeats. Just like everything else in life. With this insight, something subtle but profound arises: disillusionment. Not in a negative sense, but a healthy letting go of illusions. We stop chasing what cannot last. We stop fearing what cannot stay. We begin to feel the natural fading of things, the breath, the thought, the sense of me. And in that fading, we touch a deep stillness. This stillness is not empty. It is full of peace. It is what remains when the noise falls away. And in that peace, we see the final step of the breath path: letting go. Not giving up, not suppressing, but releasing the grasping, releasing the clinging, releasing the need to control, possess, and define. The breath shows us how. It comes. It goes. It asks for nothing. It teaches freedom. These 16 steps are not goals to be achieved. They are experiences to be discovered. Sometimes they arise naturally, one after the other. Sometimes they appear in unexpected order. What matters is not following a perfect sequence, but cultivating a steady, honest, and kind awareness. As we stay with the breath, it will unfold. It will reveal. It will teach. The breath is more than air. It is a path, a mirror, a teacher. It leads us from the surface of experience to its depths, from distraction to clarity, from reactivity to calm, from illusion to truth. And it does so gently, breath by breath, moment by moment. As the breath deepens our awareness, something begins to unfold quite naturally. Our attention starts to expand. What was once just a simple observation of air moving in and out becomes a wider and more intimate understanding of our entire experience. We begin to see that the breath is not isolated. It touches everything: body, feelings, mind, and the deeper processes that shape our perception. In this way, the practice of following the breath gradually opens into the broader path of mindfulness, a path that the Buddha described in terms of 4 powerful foundations. These 4 foundations are not philosophical ideas. They are direct ways of seeing. They invite us to turn inward and observe the truth of our experience with clarity and compassion. And what is remarkable is that all of these foundations are already present in the breath. The breath is not separate from them. It is the doorway into each one. In fact, the ancient teachings point out that the practice of following the breath, when done with full awareness, contains the entire map of awakening. The first foundation is awareness of the body. This is where everything begins. We start by observing the breath, but quickly we notice its connection to the body. The breath flows through the chest, the belly, the throat. It reflects the tension in our shoulders, the stillness or restlessness in our limbs, the subtle shifts in posture. With patient attention, we begin to sense the whole body breathing. The body is no longer just something we think about. It becomes something we inhabit. We begin to live in the body, not in our ideas about it. This presence in the body grounds us. It pulls us out of mental noise and into something stable, something real. And from here, we begin to notice more. We feel sensations arise and pass: warmth, tightness, tingling, pressure. We feel heaviness or lightness, movement or stillness. All of this becomes part of the practice. We are no longer avoiding the body or living above it. We are meeting it fully. And in doing so, we reconnect with a sense of aliveness that is both earthy and sacred. The second foundation is awareness of feeling, not emotion in the usual sense, but the basic tone of experience. Every moment brings with it a flavor: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. These tones are subtle but powerful. They often drive our choices without us realizing it. A pleasant feeling may cause craving. An unpleasant one may lead to resistance. A neutral one may lead to boredom or distraction. But when we stay with the breath, we begin to see these patterns more clearly. We notice how the mind leans toward what feels good and pulls away from what feels uncomfortable. We watch how quickly judgment arises, how we label each moment as good or bad based on its feeling tone. And gradually, with gentle observation, we loosen the grip. We don't have to react. We can just feel. The breath becomes our anchor in the middle of this feeling world. It teaches us to stay present, not pulled by desire or pushed by aversion. Then comes the third foundation, awareness of the mind itself. This is a deeper turning inward. Now we are not just watching what we feel, we are watching the one who feels. We begin to observe the state of the mind in real time. Is it distracted or focused? Heavy or bright? Closed or open? Calm or agitated? These are not judgments. They are reflections. The mind is not always peaceful, and it doesn't need to be. What matters is that we see it as it is. This kind of seeing takes courage. It requires honesty. The mind can be tricky. It can pretend to be still when it is secretly resisting. It can seem calm on the surface, but be busy underneath. But when we return to the breath, we find a place to stand. We can watch the mind without being caught by it. We can learn how it moves. We can notice its habits, how it spins stories, how it gets hooked, how it escapes. And in that noticing, freedom begins. The fourth foundation is awareness of deeper patterns, the laws of nature, the inner workings of experience. Here we begin to see the rise and fall of everything. We see that nothing stays. We see how grasping leads to suffering and how letting go brings ease. We recognize the habits that keep us bound, craving, aversion, delusion. We also see the qualities that lead to liberation, mindfulness, concentration, equanimity, compassion. This is not theoretical knowledge. It is something we taste directly in practice. When we stay with the breath long enough, these truths begin to show themselves. We don't have to search for them. They are already happening, in each breath, in each moment of awareness. The breath becomes a living teaching. Each inhalation reveals a rising. Each exhalation reveals passing. And in the space between, we discover silence, not the absence of sound, but the stillness beneath all movement. What's beautiful about this unfolding is that it is so natural. We don't need to move from one foundation to the next like climbing stairs. We don't need to memorize anything. When mindfulness is steady and the breath is trusted, the body reveals itself. The feelings reveal themselves. The mind reveals itself. The deeper truths of life begin to glow from within. It is all one path, one unfolding, one moment of awareness leading to the next. So, in this way, the simple act of breathing becomes something sacred. It becomes the thread that weaves together the entire tapestry of practice. With each breath, we touch the body. With each breath, we feel the pulse of pleasure and pain. With each breath, we witness the mind. With each breath, we see the rise and fall of all things. Nothing is left out. This is why the breath is not a beginner's practice. It is the whole path. It begins with noticing the body and ends with seeing the truth of existence. It begins with one breath and ends with boundless freedom. We don't need to look elsewhere. The teachings are already here, in the breath, in the body, in the mind, in the heart. All we need to do is listen. As we continue walking the path of breath awareness, we may notice something subtle but unmistakable. The mind begins to quiet down. Not because we force it to, but because it simply has less reason to move. The usual noise that fills our inner world, the thinking, the remembering, the worrying, starts to soften. Like sediment settling to the bottom of a still pond, the restlessness of the mind fades when we stop stirring it. What remains is clarity, stillness, and presence. This is the doorway to deep meditation. Deep meditation is not a special state reserved for experts or monks. It is not mystical, and it does not require chanting, rituals, or complex techniques. It arises naturally when the mind is gathered, when attention is unified, and when the breath becomes the center of gravity for our awareness. In this space, we do not need to chase insight. Insight begins to emerge on its own. This state of deep meditation does not come from trying hard. In fact, Trying too hard is one of the biggest obstacles. The more we chase a particular feeling, the more tense we become. Deep meditation begins with letting go of expectations. It begins when we stop trying to meditate and instead allow the mind to rest in the breath, moment by moment. There is no need to manipulate anything. The breath leads, and the mind follows. As this relationship deepens, the breath itself begins to change. It becomes softer, more subtle. Sometimes, it feels like it disappears altogether. But what's really happening is not that the breath is gone. It's that the mind has become so still, so unified, that the breath no longer stands out as a separate object. It is just part of a quiet, spacious field of awareness. In this field, something beautiful happens. Effort fades. We are no longer holding attention in place. We are no longer wrestling with thoughts. Awareness settles naturally, like a leaf drifting down to still water. And in that stillness, joy can arise. Not the kind of joy that depends on conditions, but a gentle, nourishing joy that comes from simply being present. This joy is not loud. It does not overwhelm. It supports the heart. Like a deep breath after years of holding tension. Following joy, a sense of ease begins to spread. The body feels light. The mind feels open. There is no struggle. We are not running toward anything. And we are not running away. We are simply here. Fully. Softly. Awake. This is not the end of the path. It is the deepening of it. From this quiet place, the mind becomes stable, like a flame that no longer flickers. In the ancient teachings, this still and unified mind is the ideal condition for insight to arise. Why? Because a mind that is still can see clearly. It is not clouded by thoughts. It is not distracted by noise. It is present, precise, and open. When the mind becomes steady in this way, we begin to enter meditative absorption, a state of profound calm, focus, and clarity. This is not hypnosis or trance. We are not losing awareness. We are becoming more aware than ever before. The senses withdraw, not because we push them away, but because the mind is so content that it no longer chases outer stimulation. There is no craving for sound, sight, or sensation. There is just presence, held together by the breath and the stillness it has cultivated. These states of absorption can unfold gradually. At first, it may be a brief moment, a few seconds of complete unity between breath and mind. Then, as we become more familiar, it may last longer. The breath becomes the thread that holds the mind in one place, and the mind, in turn, allows the breath to deepen its quiet rhythm. They support each other, like two dancers moving in harmony. Along the way, we may encounter distractions. Old thoughts may rise up. Emotions may try to pull us away. Physical sensations may grow louder for a time. This is natural. Deep meditation is not about never being disturbed. It's about learning how to return. Again and again, we come back to the breath. We come back to stillness. And with each return, the connection grows stronger. Eventually, we may not even need to bring the mind back. The breath becomes so subtle, so stable, that it draws the mind naturally. Awareness rests there with no effort. In this place, time begins to fade. The usual sense of me, watching the breath, begins to dissolve. There is just breath, just awareness, just the unfolding of experience with no separation, no boundary, no struggle. It is in this depth that the seeds of wisdom begin to ripen. When the mind is still, we begin to see things as they are. We see how thoughts rise and fall. We see how feelings come and go. We see how every part of our experience is impermanent, not fully in our control, and not something we can truly call mine. These are not ideas we read in books. They become real through direct observation. And all of this is born from the breath, from the humble, gentle practice of sitting down, being still, and paying attention. There is no magic here, just the power of awareness, the wisdom of simplicity, and the patience to follow the breath wherever it leads. Deep meditation is not a place we go to escape the world. It is a place where we meet the world more honestly. We meet ourselves more clearly. We meet life without the filters we usually wear. And we begin to discover that underneath all the movement, all the noise, all the grasping, there is a silence that is not empty, but full of peace. This peace is not something we create. It is something we uncover. And breath is the key. In today's world, the ancient practice of breath awareness has found its way into mainstream culture. We see it in yoga classes, therapy rooms, meditation apps, and even in corporate wellness programs. This wide popularity is not a bad thing. In fact, it shows that people are searching for calm, presence, and healing in the midst of a fast-paced and noisy life. But along with this rise in popularity comes a certain risk: misunderstanding the depth and purpose of breath practice. One common misunderstanding is the idea that watching the breath is simply a technique for relaxation. People are often told to take a deep breath and calm down, or to use the breath to manage stress. While it's true that breath awareness can lead to calmness, this is not its true purpose. The original intent of breath practice is not to relax the body. They should feel a sense of calm right away. But the truth is, when we begin to observe the breath closely, we might encounter restlessness, boredom, or even discomfort. This does not mean we are failing. It means we are starting to see what the mind usually avoids. The breath acts like a mirror. It reflects the state of our inner world. Sometimes that world is turbulent, but with patient observation, the breath teaches us how to stay with things as they are, without turning away. There is also the idea that we must control the breath. In many guided meditations, people are told to breathe in a certain way, slowly, deeply, evenly. While this may help create a sense of calm at first, it can also lead to tension. True breath practice is not about forcing the breath to behave a certain way. It is about letting the breath be natural and observing it without judgment. The breath may be shallow. It may be uneven. It may disappear for a moment. We do not need to fix it. We just need to watch it. Over time, the breath will regulate itself. But that regulation happens through letting go, not through control. Some modern teachings also reduce breath awareness to a mental trick, a way to distract the mind from negative thoughts or emotions. While the breath can serve as an anchor, its purpose is not to distract, but to illuminate. We don't turn to the breath so we can avoid our experience. We turn to the breath so we can face it with steadiness. When fear arises, we breathe with it. When sadness arises, we breathe with it. We do not run away. We stay. And slowly, we learn that we can hold even difficult emotions in a space of calm awareness. This is the real strength of breath practice. Another common belief is that breath awareness is simple and therefore not powerful. People often underestimate it. They think, just watching the breath? That's too basic. But this view misses the profound depth of the practice. The breath is like a narrow stream that, if followed with care, leads to a vast ocean. It is deceptively simple. Yes, anyone can begin by noticing their breath. But to stay with it, to follow it into silence, into stillness, into deep understanding, that requires patience, humility, and great attention. The breath is not basic. It is foundational, and it holds within it the entire path of awakening, if we are willing to follow. There is also a cultural misunderstanding that breath practice is separate from wisdom. Some people treat breath awareness as a self-help technique and see wisdom teachings as something philosophical. But in the original teachings, breath and wisdom are inseparable. Breath awareness is not just a way to feel better. It is the training ground where wisdom is born. Through breath, we see how things change. Through breath, we observe how craving arises. Through breath, we come to understand the nature of the mind. This is not philosophy. This is direct seeing. Breath is the gateway, but it is not the final destination. Finally, one of the most subtle misunderstandings is that breath practice is about achieving a certain state. People often meditate with the goal of reaching a peaceful, blissful, or enlightened state. They sit and watch the breath, but behind the watching is a mind that wants something. This craving, even for peace, becomes an obstacle. The breath does not promise a special state. It invites us to be present with what is. Sometimes that is peaceful. Sometimes it is painful. The power lies not in the state itself, but in our ability to stay present without clinging or resisting. Breath teaches us how to be free, not through escape, but through deep acceptance. So we must return to the roots. Breath awareness is not a quick fix. It is not a trend. It is a path walked by countless generations, not to gain something, but to lose our illusions. Not to build up the ego, but to see through it. It is a practice that transforms not because it gives us more, but because it helps us let go. When we understand breath in this way, we stop treating it as a technique and begin to see it as a teacher. The breath is always honest. It does not lie. It does not pretend. It shows us what is here, and it invites us to meet it with full presence. If we can do that again and again, breath becomes more than a practice. It becomes a path of liberation. There is a moment that is always here, yet often missed. A moment so close we rarely notice it. So quiet, it is drowned out by even the softest thought. It does not call attention to itself. It does not demand anything. And yet, it holds everything. This is the present moment, the place where the breath lives, where life unfolds, where awakening happens. We spend so much of our time elsewhere. The mind runs forward into plans, hopes, and fears about the future. Or it drifts backward, remembering, regretting, reliving. In this rushing back and forth, we rarely touch what is here, this breath, this body, this step, this silence. But when we do pause, when we bring the mind home to now, something shifts. A kind of quiet opens. And in that quiet, we begin to see the present moment is not small. It is vast. It holds the fullness of life. The present moment is not a static point. It is not frozen. It is alive, always unfolding, always changing. And yet, it is the only place where anything ever happens. Every breath is here. Every thought, every feeling, or love, all arise in this now. We never truly live in the past or future. We only think we do. Life only happens here. In the practice of breath awareness, we train ourselves to return, again and again, to this present. Each breath is a reminder. Each inhale says, now. Each exhale says, let go. When we rest our attention on the breath, we are not just calming the mind. We are re-entering reality. We are stepping out of imagination and into direct contact with life. And what do we find when we arrive? Often, at first, we find discomfort. We may notice tension in the body or agitation in the mind. We may become aware of feelings we've been avoiding, sadness, loneliness, fear. This is natural. The present moment is not always comfortable, but it is honest. It shows us what is here, not what we wish were here. And that honesty is the beginning of healing. As we stay, gently, without judgment, the edges begin to soften. The mind grows less reactive. We begin to see that no state lasts forever. Pain rises and falls. Thoughts come and go. Even joy is not something to hold on to. Everything flows. Everything moves. But through it all, there is something steady, not a thing, but a presence. A quiet watching. A knowing. It is not outside of us. It is the deepest part of us. And it only reveals itself when we stop running and rest in now. The miracle of the present moment is that it needs nothing added to it. It does not require improvement. It does not ask us to change anything. It only asks us to see, clearly, gently, completely. And in that seeing, there is freedom. This freedom is not dramatic. It does not arrive with fireworks. It appears slowly, like dawn touching the edge of the sky. It comes when we realize we don't need to chase peace. We only need to stop running from what is. The peace we seek is already here, hidden in plain sight. It is in the breath. It is in the pause between thoughts. It is in the simple act of feeling the wind on the skin or hearing a bird sing. We often think of awakening as something far away, something that requires years of effort. But in truth, awakening is always now. Not in the next retreat, not in the next book, but here, in this moment. If we are willing to be fully present with it, the breath is not leading us to something else. It is leading us to now. And now is where the path begins and ends. Many great teachers have pointed to this again and again. They say, if you miss the present moment, you miss your whole life. This is not a warning. It is an invitation to return, to remember, to come back to what has always been waiting for us. So what does it mean to live in the present? It means we stop arguing with what is. It means we allow each moment to be as it is, joyful or painful, clear or confused, and meet it with honesty. It means we bring our full attention to whatever we are doing, no matter how small. Washing a dish, walking a step, breathing a breath. Nothing is unworthy of attention. In fact, the ordinary things, when fully seen, become sacred. The present moment is not a concept. It is not something to understand with the mind. It is something to enter with the heart. When we do, we begin to taste a different kind of freedom, not the freedom of getting what we want, but the freedom of not needing to want. A freedom that comes from letting things be. from resting in what is. And this is the silent miracle. We realize that nothing was ever missing. All the searching, all the grasping, all the becoming, it was built on the illusion that something was lacking. But when we sit still, feel the breath, and open to now, we see that life has always been whole. We just weren't here to see it. Now we are. There is a common misconception that spiritual liberation is a destination, a hidden paradise, a celestial realm, or some far-off state that exists beyond the body, beyond this world, beyond now. Many imagine awakening as a kind of grand escape, where all suffering disappears and one floats in endless bliss. But this is a misunderstanding. The path of awakening is not a journey to another world. It is a journey into seeing this one as it truly is. The word many associate with liberation, often mistranslated as heaven or nirvana, does not point to a place. It points to a realization. It is not about going somewhere else. It is about no longer being lost. And the way to this realization is not through magical powers or mystical experiences. It is through something much simpler, the breath, this body, this moment. This is why the breath is such a powerful teacher. It does not promise escape. It does not take us out of the world. It brings us deeper in. With every inhale, we are invited to return. With every exhale, we are invited to let go. And in this cycle of returning and releasing, something begins to shift. The mind starts to loosen its grip. The illusion of control begins to dissolve. We stop trying to manipulate life and instead begin to meet it. When we follow the breath, we are not trying to become something. We are learning to stop becoming. The world constantly tells us to improve, to grow, to strive. But the breath teaches a different lesson, the lesson of enough. Just breathing, just being, just resting in what is. This is already whole. And in this simplicity, we find a kind of freedom that striving can never touch. Freedom does not arise from adding more. It arises from removing what obscures. And what obscures is not the world. It is our grasping, our aversion, our endless commentary about what is happening. We suffer not because of life, but because of how we relate to life. We fight with the present moment. We argue with reality. We chase pleasure, resist pain, and try to make everything permanent, even though nothing ever is. The breath slowly reveals this. It shows us that everything changes. No breath is held forever. No state lasts. And this truth, once feared, becomes our doorway to peace. We no longer cling to what arises, because we know it will pass. We no longer resist what is unpleasant, because we know it too will change. This is not resignation. It is wisdom. It is the quiet knowing that freedom lies not in control, but in clarity. And what becomes clear is this: there is nothing to fix. The self we've been trying to improve, defend, and polish, it is not solid. It is not a thing. It is a process, a movement, a collection of habits and thoughts arising and fading. When we sit with the breath long enough, we begin to see through the illusion of self, not through philosophy, but through direct experience. We watch thoughts arise. This is me, this is mine, and then watch them vanish. If we do not cling, they leave no trace. This is why the breath is not just a calming tool. It is a mirror. It reflects back our patterns, our clinging, our hopes, our fears. But it does so gently, without judgment. It lets us see ourselves, and then go beyond what we see. And in that seeing, something opens. A space, a silence, a freedom that is not created, only uncovered. That freedom is what the ancient teachings point to. Not a place, but a state of being unbound. Not bound by craving, not trapped by fear, not pulled by ego. It is a freedom that exists in the midst of life, not outside of it. It is the ability to walk through this world without being owned by it, to feel pain without being crushed by it, to feel joy without needing to possess it, to breathe fully in each moment without needing anything else. Some might wonder, can it really be this simple? Just breathing? Just being present? But that question comes from the mind that is used to effort, complexity, and achievement. The mind that wants to earn peace. But peace is not earned. It is remembered. It is what remains when we stop chasing. And the breath, humble and quiet, brings us there, not with force, but with presence. In truth, there is nothing new to gain. The ground of freedom has always been here. The breath only reveals what was never lost. And when we see that clearly, the idea of searching begins to fall away. We stop looking outside. We stop waiting for a better moment. We begin to live, truly, deeply, in this one. This is the path of liberation, not the escape from the world, but the full arrival in it. Not an end to suffering in some far future, but the ending of confusion now. And all of it begins and continues with a breath. Not a special breath, just this one. In the end, it always comes back to something simple. Not because simplicity is naive, but because truth is not complicated. We may travel far in our studies, explore countless texts, analyze the finest details of philosophy and mind, and yet, the deeper we go, the more we find ourselves circling back to the breath. Not because the breath contains everything, but because it is the doorway through which everything becomes visible. All the teachings, all the practices, all the instructions, they are like fingers pointing to the moon. But the breath is different. It is not pointing away. It is the moon. It is not a concept. It is not a metaphor. It is this living, moving, intimate rhythm of life that we can feel right now. It simply waits, patient, rhythmic, and always available. Whether we are suffering or at peace, angry or serene, distracted or aware, the breath is still here. Like a quiet friend who never leaves. Like a soft bell that gently calls us back when we've forgotten who we are. When the world overwhelms us, when thoughts spiral into confusion, when pain seems too much to bear, we can return. Not by force, not by rejection, but by allowing ourselves to soften into what's already here. The breath does not fix our problems. It does not erase the complexity of life, but it gives us a space to rest in the middle of it all. A space untouched by fear, untouched by hope. Just this, the breath coming in, the breath going out. This is what presence means, not being special or wise, but being here, fully, without running, without clinging, without needing to be someone else. And the breath teaches this by example. It does not grasp the in-breath. It does not resist the out-breath. It flows, it releases, it trusts the rhythm of life. In watching this, in aligning ourselves with it, we slowly begin to trust life too. And something beautiful happens when we live this way. We become less entangled, less reactive, less bound by our own stories. The moments we once dismissed, the quiet walk, the sound of rain, the taste of food, the gentle breeze, begin to shine with a kind of quiet sacredness. Not because they are rare, but because we are finally present enough to see them. This is the gift of breath awareness. It doesn't give us more. It helps us see what we already have. And in doing so, it changes how we live. Exactly as it is. Some will continue to search for teachers, for methods, for experiences. And that's okay. The path unfolds uniquely for each of us. But at some point, we all discover the same truth, that the treasure we were seeking was never hidden. It was here, beneath the noise, beneath the effort, waiting in the space between two breaths. So let us return, again and again, not because we failed, but because we remember. Let us rest in this quiet miracle that was with us from the beginning. Let us breathe, not as a technique, not as a ritual, but as a way of being, with simplicity, with honesty, with love. Because in the end, the breath is not just air. It is presence. It is peace. It is the silent whisper of freedom calling us home.